Hey, good morning. Want to thank you for joining me today. It is Wednesday, February 2nd, and thanks for joining me for a 5-minute Bible study today. I wanted to do something a little bit different. Normally, at this 5-minute Bible study, I take one passage and kind of bring out a couple points from it. But I wanted to do something a little bit different today, and that is to give 3 examples from Jesus's ministry of how physical touch or human contact, the touch of Jesus's hands, is a way that we experience the love of God. So how we experience God's love through human contact or physical touch. Now, it's true, I understand, not everybody's love language is physical touch. Not everybody is a hugger. You know, some people are huggers, some people are not huggers. But whether we're kind of that snuggle with our significant other on the couch kind of person, or whether we like to watch the movie on 2 separate couches, all of us depend on, and there's a part of all of us that values human contact and physical touch, or the touch of a hand. And I believe that's because Jesus sets an example for us of showing us in his healing ministry that human contact is a way, not the only way, but a way that we can experience the love of God. So there are 3 examples in Jesus's healing ministry from the Gospel of Mark that I just like to highlight here, and then you can go back and read these references later. But when Jesus healed people, he didn't always use his hands. He didn't always lay hands on people. Sometimes he just spoke a word and people were healed. Sometimes he even healed people from afar. In a true virtual way. Someone was far away and Jesus said that person is healed, and that person was healed. So, but there were some significant times where Jesus used his hands as part of the healing. One time was in Mark chapter 1, and if you want to read this, it's Mark 1, 40 to 45. Jesus comes upon a man who has leprosy, and the scripture says that he laid his hands on him and healed him. But before he did that, the scripture said he was moved with pity or compassion, then laid his hands on him and then healed him. So the touch of Jesus's hand communicated compassion. And compassion simply means to suffer with. So to have compassion is to feel what someone else is feeling. So if you're ever in a situation where you're grieving and hurting because someone you love is grieving and hurting, that's what compassion is. You are feeling what they're feeling. And that's what love is. Love is, one of the ways we experience love is through compassion, is feeling what someone else is feeling. And sometimes that's best communicated through the touch of a hand. We think about a hug, or we think about someone who's grieving, and no words are necessary, but we just sit down, we put our arm around them, and in sitting down, putting our arm around them, having that closeness, that human contact, we don't need any words. We're saying with our actions, I'm here with you, I feel for you, I'm feeling what you're feeling. So love is communicated through compassion, and that's often done best through physical touch or contact. Another time in Mark chapter 5, and this is kind of at the end of Mark chapter 5, Jesus comes upon a father whose 12-year-old girl is sick. He thinks that she's close to death, and he brings Jesus to the house. Jesus, when he gets to the house, finds everybody crying and grieving because they think she's already dead. But he goes into the room where she is, and he puts his hand on her hand. He touches her hand. And with the touch of his hand, he lifts her up, and she's healthy and perfectly fine and lives and is good, right? So the touch of Jesus' hand here communicates encouragement. Without any words, he's encouraging her to get up. Now, he also said, little girl, get up. But we think of how the human contact or just the physical touch can be a way of encouraging someone to believe that the situation that they're in is not as dire as it seems to be. Everybody else was discouraged because they thought that there was no hope. They thought that she was dead. Jesus, with the touch of his hand, communicated the encouragement that no, there's more to see here. We think about a pat on the back, or we think of giving someone a helping hand, or we think of applause, how the clap of a hand and how applause in a crowd can encourage somebody without words to believe that they can do better and do more and achieve more than they would otherwise do. So love, the touch of the hand, can communicate encouragement. I believe in you. And then the last example is from Mark chapter 8, or I think it's the end of chapter 7, actually, the end of chapter 7. Yes, I think it's the end of chapter 7. Jesus heals a man who is deaf and has a speech impediment. And so Jesus, in this case, the man is deaf and has a speech impediment. And what he does is he spits on his hands, and he puts his hands in the man's ears, and then he touches his tongue, and then he heals him. And the question is, why does he do that? Why does he do his hands in the ears and fingers in the ears and touch his tongue? Well, in part, the person who wrote that down, let's say it's Mark, is watching from a distance. And so that's what it looked like Jesus was doing. But isn't that what any good doctor does with us today? You know, when you go to the doctor's office, do you want a doctor who stands at the other side of the room and just looks at a chart and says, I judge you by looking at your numbers? Or do we want a doctor who gets down next to us and opens our mouth and looks in our ears and feels our skin and feels our organs and puts their hands on us? Right, that's the kind of doctor that we want. Even if the doctor thinks they know, we want the doctor to spend time with us and to use their hands to as part of the examining process. And Jesus is just doing here what that good physician does. And in doing that physician is telling us, you're worth my time. Right? I'm going to take extra time with you. Even if I think I know what's wrong with you, I'm going to take time to be thorough in the way that I get to know you. Right? That's so the human contact can communicate, you matter, you are important, I believe in you, and I'm here with you in whatever it is that you're experiencing or suffering. And those are all examples of love. Now, I know in the world today that we depend on televisits with our doctor. Right? We live in a virtual world, and there are many, many benefits for that. But I think that what COVID taught us is that there's always going to be a place for human contact. Think about how hard it was if maybe you had someone who was a loved one who was in a nursing home, and you could only visit them through a window, and how hard it was not to be able to touch them and to hug them, or that we couldn't hug a friend who was grieving the loss of their spouse because there was no funeral, because we were socially distanced and we weren't able to communicate the love that we felt for them through a hug. So again, whether we're touchy-feely people or not, whether we're naturally huggy people or not, there's a room in all of our lives for physical contact and human touch. And that's because Jesus sets an example for us that's a way that we experience God's love. So next week we'll think about another way that we experience God's love. But for now, I just want to give you a kind of a virtual pat on the back, encouragement, and thank you for joining me today. And I hope that you have a good rest of the week, and you can appreciate the contact, the human contact that you have, and give thanks for it, for what it represents in your life. Take care.